This song that I'm gonna share with you comes from the Gray Butterfly Society. Oh, okay, thank you. And it's the Awakening song. And there are 5 songs that come with it, but because of what's taking place here today, I just feel that it's appropriate to sing the Awakening song to help awaken our old ways within us, and then to reach out to our ancestors to come acknowledge in what we're doing here today. So I just feel that that's appropriate for what's taking place, and then with the water and within the world today, we always need prayer. So. Hey, hi, we are.
But I like the football team. That's what we're going there. But I'm going to go ahead and hand this over and let Casey talk to us and introduce what Rights of Nature is and what Rights of Rivers are. It's our primary focus with Movement Rights. This is what we do. We work on Rights of Nature work across the country, in the Plains area, specifically with the Ponca Nation here, and then with the Mashpee Wampanoag youth from the east, and we have relatives in the west that we've visited with about it as well.
We've done it. Thank you. I was going to say thank you, baby Gina. I'm very proud to be here today. I'm very grateful to be with all of you discussing this portion of Mother Earth, and it feels so good to be home. This is, as I talked to several people this morning, my grandpa was born up here and was part of the forest removal when he was 6 years old. So I've been able to see him playing. I've been able to see him whole and happy before our forest removal. And it's been a really, this is a life-changing event for all of us to be here in this portion. We want to be saying thank you constantly to our Usni relatives. When we talk about rights of nature, it's a very simple concept within the indigenous culture for me to have been able to understand once I was able to get over the hump of looking at it as a colonizer law. That bothered me a lot in the beginning when we were trying to think about, I met Shannon, I believe that was 2013. We actually met at a pyramid in Mexico before that, strangely enough, with a bunch of Mayan elder women, and I was doing a ceremony with them. And then sometime later, 100 women came together from around the globe in New York, way out in the country out there, to discuss what we as women have been taught in our traditional ways is to pay attention to the village. Pay attention to the village. In this case, the global village. The global village is embracing what is now called the rights of nature. It's the fastest growing environmental movement that I've ever seen. In this time of crisis, in this time that is called the purification within the context of my spiritual teachings, and is called climate change within the larger context of non-indigenous understandings of why the earth is doing what she's doing and the ocean's doing what she's doing right now. At that meeting, many things were discussed, but the same thing was happening in all villages. The water was being defiled. The air was choking on herself. The earth was being destroyed. The fire disrespected. All of the things that they do call climate change and pollution were happening everywhere. And the 100 women that were there had various ways that they were addressing the situation within their territories. And when I heard about these things, these laws called rights of nature, I shut down. I just had no reason to even pay much attention to it, because I always think of the things like my brother Carter said, you know, why did they have a Freedom of Religious Act in 1978? That's because they still want another law around our religion. You know, it's not, we wouldn't need it otherwise. Over the years of meeting with movement rights and having community meetings, having iron forums, intertribal rights of nature forums, traveling to New Zealand to meet with the Maori people around the Wanganui River, traveling to not just to New Zealand, but to Ecuador, where it's within the Constitution, and having the Constitution of the Ponca Nation examined through our eyes from our original instructions. It became clear that we could do that within our territory as a protective measure in a statute, from our own cosmology, from our own understanding of what the earth, the water, the fire, the air was telling us to do. And that if we did that, could become an enforceable law. You know, when my granddaughter came with that water today from our community, how do we protect that water? We could do another Standing Rock there that lasts for a while. We could go back to jail, and we've done that many times. We're going to stand for the water and the land. But what else can we do? Perhaps we can take the words that we speak in English now, that is the common language of all of us. Perhaps we could look at the statutes within the Ponca Nation and use the cosmology of the inherent rights in the laws of nature that already exist. And to recognize, in our case, the immutable Ponca rights of nature, those that already exist. As we talked about this before, you cannot give rights to anything. You can either recognize or deny them. We recognize that the rights of nature and the rights of indigenous people are inherent and intertwined within the cosmology, within the prayer, within the understanding of the natural laws and the original instructions of the Ponca people. So we simply put it into a series of words with legal help that has the community's input, that has the prayer and the ceremony undeniably leading the way. And then that was in 2017 when I was on the council at that time. We also passed a moratorium on fracking and injection wells. We also passed resolutions against KXL and against many of the other pipelines that are poisoning our territory. And we also in 2023, under a different council, passed the immutable Ponca rights of rivers. When we were forcibly removed from this territory, and this is something we all have to work together on because it was part of the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868 that created this situation within our tribal nations up here. But when that happened, by the way, we have 5 treaties, so this is also a treaty rights issue. Whenever we decided to do the rivers rights, it was in recognition of the ancestors that were forcibly removed from this territory. And up here we live between Nishu, and they call it the Niobrara and the Missouri River. Down there we live between Nijike and Niska, so that where those rivers met reminded our people of this territory. So honoring those ancestors' wishes is where we've always come from. Now those are in place. We still have jurisdictional issues that we have to deal with, but we understand too, through the McGirt decision, that there will come a time that red nations will do exactly as the prophecy said. We're going to rise up and lead the way back. Lead the way back to be forward again. Into the future, we step way back into those natural understandings, recognizing the natural laws. Rights of nature, rights of the rivers, those are natural laws. The wind's going to blow. There's nobody who's going to say, oh, I'm going to make law against that. You know, it's got to stop or it better blow today. Then that's a natural law. And that's what recognizing rights of nature is to simply say natural law exists. It's an inherent right. We humans are not separate from nature. We are part of nature. And we recognize that. Thank you. We've done a shot.
Cha, Wanikisak, Natasuis Kira, Nutamas Masipiat. Hello, good day. I'm Kira. I'm from the Mashpee Wampanoag Nation in Massachusetts. I'm the youth advisor for the Mashpee NEA group. We're the Mashpee Wampanoag Youth Native Environmental Ambassadors. We've been traveling around with pioneers and movement rights for the past couple years, learning about the rights of nature movement, both across Turtle Island and internationally. And we got really interested in the rights of nature stuff because we're traditional stewards of our lands. And what we decided to do was make a law on the rights of herring in our community. And we're going to have Isaiah explain a little bit the significance of our herring.
So, Natasuis Isaiah Peters, Ntomas Masipia, Natai Masipia. I'm Isaiah Peters. I live in Mashpee. My blood and bones are from Mashpee. And our herring are very crucial to the Wampanoag culture because it's in our creation stories. We use it, and it's a huge food staple. We smoke it, we corn it, we do a lot of stuff with it. It's our main source for bait usually. And growing up, I've been just surrounded by my herring, like going to the herring room with my dad and getting some herring and chopping it up and then going fishing with it. It's just a huge part of our culture and everything. And and it signifies our new year. That's a crucial one to not forget. And they're suffering from a few things. So kids will come out the water and they'll have like irritated eyes and irritated skin and everything. And being a water people, the water is crucial to our culture. Like we have quahogs that are being affected, which is this wampum around my neck. We have, like what else? The stripers, the bluefish, everything is just being affected by just invasive ideas. And I feel like rights of nature will be a huge staple to helping us like progress more because we get traditional ecological knowledge from all these elders from different communities and different just areas that can help us. Like for example, we went to Alaska learning about rights of nature. It was our first trip with the pioneers, and we learned about their salmon runs. Yeah, their salmon runs are staggered and how theirs don't have too much overflow or pressure because back home our fish runs are built in a way where the fish can't swim up them easy and they overtire themselves and sometimes end up dying before they can make it up the ladder to go and spawn and make new life for the new year. So they're facing a few things.
This afternoon, I don't want to become redundant, but I want to make sure that those of you who are attending here have a full understanding when you walk away from here about what rights of nature work is and what it can be in your own community. So I'm going to pass the microphone over to these lovely ladies on this.
Makuda Manchin Kyohei, Naho Pipise, Mima Crystal, Mima Okanichi Saponi, Wazua. So, man, I feel at peace being here. This is beautiful. I I sit on the board here at Movement Rights, but I also co-founded 7 Directions of Service with my husband Jason. And I was really lucky to be able to bring some youth and elders out. I was on the tribal council in 2017. We found out that there was a pipeline coming through, and that pipeline looked really different from the pipelines out here, because on the East Coast, most of our tribes are not federally recognized, so we don't have treaties. Well, we have treaties, but the United States fails to recognize them. They want to come up and say, oh, well, we're the United States now, we're not the same people that came over here from England, which they were, same people. But they don't want to recognize our treaty. And so we had this pipeline coming through. I had to resign from the tribal council in order to fight it, because some of our tribal leaders, I didn't want to affect their sovereignty or to have a relationship with the government. And so along this long process, we've grown our community to understand that you are part of nature, right? Like, our people have forgotten who they were. One of our Dakota friends said it's like they're asleep, and so we have to wake them up. And so sometimes you have to shake them up and wake them up through legal action. Sometimes you have to wake them and shake them up and just, be their friend and say, come on into the group, let's help you out. So when we formed 7 Directions, most of our tribes are very colonized in their thinking. And even though they kayak or canoe on the water, they still think they're in control of it, when you're not. Everything is fluid. And we're trying to change their perspective. So we started with working with a state representative, Pricey Harrison, to introduce the rights of the Haw River, because that was our most sacred river that was going to be damaged by the pipeline. And she did not understand at first. Like, she was like, well, we already have a North Carolina law. And I said, no, that law is about parks. This law is about the river and having it, being able to be free from pollution and exist and flourish. Because you see, the Haw River is the headwaters for the Cape Fear, which leads to the ocean. We are all connected. This one river is connected to all the other rivers in the state. Matter of fact, it connects all the way to, all the other rivers throughout the United States. And she said it was going to be a long shot, and I was like, that's okay. Just give us a chance. We have to educate our people and get them to understand. And so Jason and I, we kind of set out on this. We introduced the bill, and that gave it some teeth. So when you have legislation, you can hold up a piece of paper, because people love pieces of paper. It just makes it official, right? So we have this piece of paper, showed them that yes, you can introduce legislation. And then we introduced another piece of legislation for the Dan River, which is very similar. And those 2 rivers in North Carolina were very close to where our territory is. Now in concert, like effort across the state, because again, we don't have borders, right? But because the colonial government instituted these borders, we have to go into different government territories. Now, Virginia is a Commonwealth state, so they have different laws, but they do recognize indigenous people, whereas the state has this Commission of Indian Affairs, which is, it's just so colonial, right? Everybody is whitewashed, and they just are not in touch with nature at all. And so when I met Shannon and Grandma Casey, and was just amazed at the work they were doing about rights of nature, and I said, man, if we could get our tribe to write a resolution, that would just be amazing. So I'm still working on them. But then I met the Mashpee, the youth, and I was like, man, that's the thing right there, is the youth. So now I have some youth up here. They're going to be our people to get this revolution started in our community. Because we are starting this revitalization, and earlier we were listening to the Ponca talk about their language, and we have our language that has been brought back. and our youth are listening to it. We actually are working on a curriculum to help others, because I do feel that that's our language. That's what they need to speak. Everybody needs to speak that, like not the English first. They need to understand that in our community, this is our language. And when you do that, you kind of awaken your spirit to the earth, into the water, into the trees, and everything around you. And it just changes your mindset. Because that's what we have to do, is change people's minds and their hearts. Because again, on the East Coast, people have been asleep for so long. One of our former chairmen, his name is Lawrence, and you know he's learned a lot, because most of our history has been written down and interpreted in a colonial way, and so we had to go and uninterpret it and see what they really meant. And we found out that we have the sturgeon was one of the fish bones that was found in our burial sites. And so we know that that fish meant something to us. But because of capitalistic ideals, like the heron, the fish can't swim up. So that's one of the things that we're trying to work on, is the rights of the sturgeon. The rights of the red wolf, which is indigenous to North Carolina. And so we're trying to bring these out in our community so people can say, oh, this is something that belongs to us. Because again, people have to realize what is important in your place, in your territory, so you can protect it. And so I'm just so grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
This is spreading, y'all. Buju Anin, Anishinaabe and Dunjabab, Meganakoji and Iniwe, Gina, Peltier and Dishnakash. And so I'm Black Bear Clan. I'm Anishinaabe with the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa over up in North Dakota, close to the Canadian border. My name is Gina Peltier. I am with Mukwa, an Indigenous woman-led organization focused on climate justice and Indigenous sovereignty. And I'm also a co-facilitator of the Rise and Repair space over in Minnesota. And the Rise and Repair Coalition is an alliance of organizations of climate justice and Indigenous sovereignty. And so with this alliance, we are focused on state policy work that combats climate justice and focus on Indigenous sovereignty, you know, bringing land back and all that good stuff. And that's been quite fun to co-facilitate and bring in, because it's been monumental to see all these different organizations and all these different groups around Minnesota come together with all the different issues that they're working on and utilize their resources to accomplish the same thing. And that's to pass state policy for protections for so many things. On top of that, we also oppose all those state policies that those politicians want to push that will not help us, you know. And so within this space, we have all these organizations who are pursuing all this legislation or opposing it. And so I co-facilitate the space with Leanna Goose. She's another Anishinaabe woman. She's out of Leech Lake. She's really part of my language badass. And then we also facilitate the space with a European American male. And the reason I bring him up is because he's phenomenal, and quite honestly, we couldn't do this work without him. And he's a great example of how we need our allies to stand up and support us, because he follows what we say to a tooth. To a T? To a T? He backs us up, he supports us, he does the work that we don't have time for. He writes the emails, he makes the phone calls, and then he really does make the connection with our allies, with our non-Indigenous allies, and he really helps bring them to the space in a really respectable way. So I want to give both of them a shout out, because I could not be doing this work without them. When we started this work, we knew that this is long term. We will never retire.
That's right.
Never. And so we had all these other organizations pursuing state policy work, and we're in support of them. But we're sitting there and we're like, how do we incorporate Indigenous values, Indigenous lifeways? How do we bring the rights of nature to state policy work? And us being a Anishinaabe, we are obsessed with our manumin, our wild rice. And for those of you who don't know, the Anishinaabe, we originated over in the New York area, on the East Coast. And our prophecies told us that strangers would be coming to our land. And if we don't migrate to where the food grows on water, we will disappear. And so that's what we did. We migrated and we searched for that food that grows on water, the good berry. And where does wild rice grow? All around the Great Lakes. And so that's where we settled. And we have been obsessed with wild rice ever since. In the wild rice, it only grows in clean water. You don't need any pesticides for it. Wild rice used to grow all the way over in Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, all the way up into Canada. My elders over up in Turtle Mountain grew up with wild rice. It was everywhere. And they expressed to me all the time how devastated they are to see the disappearance and destruction of it, because we don't have any more wild rice up in our nation. Really, wild rice is only really in Minnesota right now. And so we are like, we need to protect wild rice. And this is a great avenue to introduce those who don't know about our Indigenous life ways. You can bring our Indigenous wisdom to the tables, to state policy. And that's what we're doing. And so we were like, what do we need to do first? Well, that's an easy question for me. I was like, we need to talk to the tribes. We need to get their input. We need to see what they want to see for policy work and for laws. And we basically need to get their input. And so where we started is we started meeting with all the tribes of Minnesota to see what protections we had in place, what they wanted, what we needed. Wild rice grows in lakes. We use canoes to harvest it with our long poles. There are some band members who want to use motorized boats, but that is not our ways, and we destroy the manumin that way. And there's always quite an uproar about that. But we do harvest it naturally with our canoes, and we use our knockers and pullers. So we'll basically use our sticks to pull in the manumin and knock it off. And we've been doing this since the beginning, and that is the way that it needs to be done. Otherwise, you will destroy the manumin. And so we were busy going around talking to the tribes, getting their input, and building this piece of legislation. And so what we did is we got all the input. We got all the protections that we wanted, like no boating in the wild rice lake beds, no pesticides. We wrote in some policy that would have a sulfate standard. Because like I said, wild rice needs clean water to thrive. Another thing that I like about our protection for wild rice is that since it doesn't need clean water to thrive, that's another good way to combat the pipelines, the mining, the data centers, because we don't need them. We don't need any of that. You know, the mining and the fossil fuels, that's temporary. All of that is absolutely temporary. You know, all these politicians say, we need jobs, we need jobs. Those jobs are temporary. You respect wild rice, that will help us thrive for infinite generations to come. And that's what we should be striving for. We should be using those vital resources that we can thrive on for infinite generations to come. And so that's one of the things I like to argue with the politicians about.